is Magnolia ASMR, and today I'm going to be reading some folktales to you. Given just all of the really strange and kind of surreal things that are happening in the world right now, I thought it would be somewhat comforting to kind of go back to childhood and read some fairy tales. However, these are not your typical fairy tales. This is actually a collection of stories that have been drawn from a number of folk tales around the world that have been translated to English. Some of them are from Spain, others are from Russia, and they have some really interesting illustrations. But all of the stories are kind of atypical in the fact that they deal with protagonists who are all female and who have really strong, kind of courageous storylines to them. There's no point to that. I just really like the noise. I think I'm gonna grab some water. Okay. I guess we'll start with the first story. So, this is a tale from Spain, and it's called Blanca, Flor. Many years ago, when the stars above had no names, a king and a queen ruled kindly and fairly in a distant kingdom. Though their lives were comfortable, they were unable to have a child, and this made them extremely unhappy. As the years passed, the queen began to lose hope, upset by what not having a child could mean for her husband and their kingdom. She decided to visit the devil. Though she hid her desperation as best as she could, the devil, who was very cunning, sensed her misery immediately and knew he could take advantage of her. "You will give birth to a son," the devil said. After a pause, he added, "When he turns 20, you must allow him to leave home." The queen knew that by the time her son turned 20, he would be a grown man and in control of his own life. She consented to the devil's demand, unable to see any other way out of her sad situation. Soon after the queen's visit to the devil, she gave birth to the healthiest, best-looking, and strongest boy in all the kingdom. The royal family had so much wanted an heir that they spoiled him, and he didn't understand how lucky he was. As the prince grew older, he became more impulsive and irresponsible. He grew to love gambling more than anything else in life. In fact, the prince became such a celebrated gambler that the devil realized the time had come to make good on the demand he had placed upon the queen. One night, he appeared before the prince disguised as a duke of a nearby kingdom and offered to play a game of cards. When the devil let the prince beat him, the prince, excited by the prospect of making an easy fortune, challenged the devil to play again the next day. It was in this second round that the devil revealed his true purpose. He won every game and left the prince without a penny to his name. "I would keep playing you," the prince wept, "but I don't have any money left to gamble." The devil gazed straight into his eyes, revealing his true identity, and whispered, "In that case, you can gamble your soul." The prince accepted, desperate to win back all he had lost. But the devil won once more, and the prince was upset. to win back your soul, you must come to my castle," said the devil, who wasn't finished tormenting the prince yet. "I will give you 3 tasks. If you complete them, I will give you back your soul." The prince realized he had no choice. Without his soul, he would wither like a tree in the desert. Sad and downtrodden, he returned home to say goodbye to his parents. The king and queen remembered the promise the queen had made to the devil 20 years earlier, and afraid of what would befall their son, they confessed the truth to him. The prince didn't fault his parents for the deal they had made, because he was certain he could easily complete the tasks the devil proposed, and that his life would go back to normal. And so the prince went in search of the devil's castle. He wandered back and forth throughout the countryside for a full day, not knowing quite how to reach it. Just as the sun was setting, he met an old woman who asked him for something to eat. The prince gave her all that he had, and the grateful woman asked him if there was anything she could do for him in return. "I'm on my way to the devil's castle," the prince answered. "I've been walking around all day, but I haven't been able to find it. You're near, but you won't get there unless you follow my instructions," the old woman said. "You must go to a stream near the river Hatred, where the devil's 3 daughters bathe. Once you get there, hide the clothes of the Blanca Flor, the youngest daughter. Don't return them until she promises to help you." The prince walked on, across valleys, forests, and mountains, until, through the clouds, he saw the rocky fortress that was the devil's castle. Along the side of the path, he spotted a river and found trees on its bank to hide behind as he waited for the devil's daughter to arrive. It was not long before they appeared and began to bathe in the river. After some time, the 2 older sisters came out and got dressed, immediately turning into doves and flying away, but the youngest daughter stayed in the water. Blanca Flor floated in the river pool, watching the clouds in the sky, hoping to reach them one day. "Anywhere but here," she murmured. The young woman did not want to get out of the water and get dressed, for she knew that the second she did, she would become a dove and have to fly back to the castle like her sisters. She hated the boring routine her devil father imposed. He wouldn't let his daughter read, talk, or even think. Afraid to lose them, he had trapped the 3 women in the form of doves, imprisoning them in a castle that served as their cage. Blanca Flor felt helpless. The only time she ever felt happy was when she was bathing in the river. But when her skin began to wrinkle in the water, she knew it was time to get out. Droplets of water glistened on her skin. She walked over to the tree where she had left her clothes, but when she got there, she saw a young man she had never met holding her garments. "I will give you your clothes back if you promise to help me reach your father," the prince said. Blanca Flor lifted her head proudly. She was not going to let anyone scare her. Though the prince was asking her to help him, she saw an opportunity to help herself as well. Maybe this was her chance to escape, something she had dreamed about for so long. If she accepted the prince's demand, she realized she could have him help her outwit the beast defending the fortress, which awoke at any sound and would go back to sleep only if he heard the devil's voice. It was this beast that truly kept her trapped in the devil's castle. "I set the terms here, not you," Blanca Flor replied confidently. "I can assure you that you need me more than I need you. Follow me to my father's castle, and don't speak until I give you permission, but be sure to speak when I do." Impressed by the young girl's poise, the prince accepted at once. His only desire was to win back his soul. He returned his clothes, and when she was dressed, Blanca Flor turned into a dove as she always had. Together the two went back to the castle. The devil wasn't surprised to see the prince. Ready to trick him once again, he revealed the 3 challenges. Your first task is to flatten and plow the hill, then plant wheat. When it's grown, harvest it, grind the grain, and bring me a loaf of bread tomorrow. Upon understanding that the devil had set him an impossible task, the prince's heart sank. He realized that instead of returning to his parents, he would spend the rest of his days withering away in the devil's castle. Blanca Flor heard him weeping. She knew what her father was like, but this time she was not going to let him succeed. She was determined to escape the prison in which she lived, and to help the prince escape as well. I promised to help you, she said, and I am as good as my word. That night, she plowed the earth on the nearby hill with her magical wings, and planted the field. Her claws harvested the wheat, and her feathers ground the wheat into flour. When the prince awoke, he saw a warm loaf of bread before him, which he took to the devil. You wouldn't have been able to plow a single foot of that field without Blanca Flor's help, the devil bellowed. He tossed the bread into the fire. Your second task is to turn this field into a vineyard and bring me a bottle of wine in the afternoon. The prince knew that the devil had set another impossible task, so he asked Blanca Flor to help him once again. She fluttered around him and promised to bring him a bottle of wine. Then she added, "Remember to speak when I ask you to. If you refuse, you will have failed to keep up your part of the bargain." The young man looked into her eyes and nodded, so off Blanca Flor flew, until she saw the field, which had become dry and barren. She begged the clouds for water, and the sun to change hours into days. She asked the wind to blow the leaves off the grapevines. Then, with her magical wings, she harvested the field. Her claws trampled the grapes, and her wings fermented the wine. Then she handed the bottle over to the prince, who brought it to the devil. The devil knew that Blanca Flor had helped the prince yet again. Without her, how could he have performed such tasks? The third chore, though, would be extremely difficult, even for her. I would like to give my youngest daughter the ring at the bottom of the sea. Bring it to me. Once again, the prince asked Blanca Flor for help, for he was incapable of doing what the devil had requested. This time, however, Blanca Flor wept in sorrow, for she knew her father had asked for the ring of forgetfulness. If she were to place this ring on a finger on her right hand, everyone she knew except her father would forget her. She could imagine no worse punishment. The prince tried to reassure her. Tears fell from Blanca Flor's eyes, but she flew off to find the ring. She knew that if she didn't help the prince, he would remain locked up in the castle, and she along with him. She had to try. Blanca Flor flew to the sea and dove down to the very bottom, where she found the ring. She devised a plan. She pulled off the longest feather in her right wing. When she returned to her father's castle, Blanca Flor gave the ring to the prince, who presented it to the devil. But when he allowed his daughter to resume her human form, and he tried to put the ring on her, he realized she was missing her right ring finger, just where she had pulled out the feather. The devil growled. "You will wear the ring on your left hand instead," he decreed. "He who loves you will forget you the moment anyone but you embraces him." Blanca Flor's heart sank, but she was glad to know that her plan had been partially successful. The prince was free. All that remained was for him to fulfill the last part of his promise, and to help her obtain her own freedom as well. As it grew dark, Blanca Flor set out to escape from the castle with the prince. As they ran through the corridors, The dreaded beast heard their footsteps and lifted his head up to sniff the night air. "The time has come for you to speak up," whispered Blanca Flor. "Don't be afraid. All you have to say is this: the free person is the one who dreams, not the one who flies." The prince immediately understood the significance of those words. They sounded like something the devil himself would say. They were a whisper that would silence the beast, tricking him into thinking that the devil was speaking. By speaking these words, he could keep the devil asleep and help Blanca Flor gain her freedom. The prince gathered his courage and slowly said the words. The beast dropped his head and went back to sleep, and the prince and Blanca Flor ran for the stable, where 2 horses named Swift Wind and Deep Thought awaited them. While Blanca Flor kept a lookout, she asked the prince to saddle Deep Thought. "And grab that old rusted sword you see on the ground," she said to the prince. "If you don't, my father will capture us." The prince went into the stable and saw a young, powerful stallion. It was Swift Wind. Deep Thought, an old and skinny coat track of a horse, was beside him. The prince saw the rusty sword on the ground, and lying next to it, a shiny new sword. Sure that Blanca Flor had made a mistake, he saddled Swift Wind and took the shiny sword. Blanca Flor saw what he had done, but the urgency of their escape weighed heavily on her, and she got on Swift Wind without another word. They galloped through the dark night toward the spot where the sun rose. As soon as they saw daylight, they would be free of the devil. But the devil, who was aware of their escape even without the help of his beast, saddled Deep Thought and galloped through the night, following closely on their tail. When he approached them, he and his horse became an enormous animal, one that was faster, more powerful, and even crueler than the devil himself. "Don't look back," the prince said to Blanca Flor as soon as he saw her father coming after them. "Don't be afraid. We're riding the fastest horse in the world." "You're mistaken," Blanca Flor replied. "Only on Deep Thought's back could you have escaped. Now we need to face the monster that my father has become." Blanca Flor reached into her pocket and pulled out a handful of seeds, which she dropped behind the horse's flank. As they fell, they turned into balls of fire, and the devil reared back until he was able to put them out. Then Blanca Flor asked the prince for the rusted sword. When he produced the shiny sword instead, she knew that it would prove useless in battle, as it did not possess the power hidden inside the rusty old blade. Thinking quickly, Blanca Flor turned into a bird and stretched her wings until they became the size of an eagle's. She gripped the shiny sword in her powerful claws and pinned her father to the ground with so much strength that the earth beneath him split in 2, creating a gulf so deep that he could not get out. And so she and the prince were able to escape from the devil and his castle. Once they were alone, Blanca Flor regained her human form. Yet she was deeply troubled. She knew that her father's final curse had taken hold when he put the ring on her left finger, and that she would be forgotten the second anyone hugged the prince. This upset her greatly, for over the course of their trials and adventures together, the two had fallen in love. The prince returned to his kingdom with Blanca Flor at his side. He forbade anyone to hug him, so that he would never forget his one true love. Her embraces were the only ones he permitted. One day the prince and Blanca Flor visited a far-off country. Unaware of the curse, the king of that country hugged the prince in welcome, then presented his daughter to the prince and offered her hand in marriage. The prince, upon whom the curse had taken its toll the moment the king had hugged him, had already forgotten Blanca Flor entirely, and he agreed to marry the king's daughter. But the princess was in fact the devil in disguise. He had managed to escape from the pit Blanca Flor had left him in. When the wedding day arrived, Blanca Flor returned to the kingdom dressed as a craftsperson. "Your Majesty," she said to the prince and princess, "I come from far away to bring you the most precious thing I have." She produced a magical stone and a cage. "What strange gifts," thought the prince, but aloud he said, "Thank you for your generosity." Later, after the prince was asleep, the devil took off his human form, and under the glow of the moonlight, wished to know why his daughter had offered such odd gifts. As soon as he voiced his question, the stone began to speak. "I am the stone of sorrow, what your daughter feels in her heart." Ever since she worked her magic to help free the prince, but was never truly freed herself, she grew the wheat and made the bread that the prince brought to you, and she harvested the grapes to make the wine that he had brought to you as well, and she retrieved the ring from the bottom of the sea, all in the hopes of freedom. The voice of the stone awoke the prince, who little by little began to remember. The devil then asked the cage why his daughter had brought it as a gift. "I've come so that Blanca Flor can live inside my bars," the cage answered. "She suffers greatly from being forgotten, so greatly that she prefers to live like a caged dove." At this very moment, with the voice of the cage echoing through the room, the curse was lifted. The prince remembered everything and ran to Blanca Flor. When he found her, he took the ring of forgetfulness, now useless with the spell broken, off her left hand. He threw it back into the sea, from which he now realized it never should have been taken. Blanca Flor, the only person to have ever tricked the devil and escaped from his grasp, became the wisest and most just queen who had ever lived. And from that moment on, not a single person forgot her ever again. I'm sorry if you can hear my partner typing in the background. We're sharing a workspace right now, but maybe some people like that sound. Anyway, I want to thank you for listening and hope that you have a restful rest of your day or evening.